Hello, Culture Matters podcast. We're back again with another culture topic. Here's a quote before I introduce the in the luxury business, you have to build on heritage. Bernard Arnault. Bernard, founder of LVMH, or CEO, chairman, leader of LVMH. I believe it's LVMH. Yeah, LVMH. What does he mean by that? Well, this topic today is how to build a business brand that people will never forget. Luxury built on heritage. What is heritage? Heritage, history. What is history? Heritage. The first thing that pops to mind is authenticity. A brand is the belief consumers have in X to solve for Y. X, the product or the service, the person, the place, the thing, right? Personal brand, the person, the place, the destination. That country has a perception of uh, yeah, those outside of it have a perception of that country. That person, we have a perception of that person. We have a perception of that product or that company. We have a perception of brand, the perception of X to solve, the belief in X to solve for Y. Why? That we, as a consumer, have a certain need, a want, a desire. In the absence of water, I'm thirsty, so I have thirst. I desire water. The brand, my belief of water, it will hydrate me, and the based on the quality of water, I'll come back to that, or I'll go, in pursuit of another. But quality and brand aren't necessarily correlated because a, f- a, f- a brand could be diluted. It isn't the same well it once was. So how do you build a brand that people will never forget? How do you actually do that? Authenticity is a component, right? What is authenticity? Let's find out. Authenticity, the quality of being authentic. Well, duh, genuineness, originality, legitimacy, validity, truth. Interesting synonyms to authenticity, reliability. This is where I think the quality of the product. It's like if you look at like a luxury brand, these are products of a higher, not only a higher material, a higher quality material, but the artisanship. I was watching a documentary or a documentary interview around, I believe it was Hermes. And this is a multi-generational family. You want to talk about heritage that spends tremendous amount of hours. The artisans that actually make the bags are highly educated. There's only so many of them. They invest a tremendous amount of time on each bag. There's only a certain amount of supply of the bags, and people go on wait lists for the quality. So it's like this combination of quality, which has to do with the intellectual property, which has to do with the amount of time that the organization's been in business, which has to do with the family that's been operating it for generations, which has to do with the values of that family, which has to do with the history of that family and what adversities and what triumphs and what stories have translated throughout that family's heritage. We want to talk about heritage and how that influences the type of person that is hired to the business and which has a relationship with that person's education, that person's personality, and their life experience, which likely identifies with the culture of the business, which has to do with the values the culture of the family, the values and the history, the story, the heroes that rise up in that family, right? The patriarchs, the progeny of the progenitor. So there's a founder of the family, the founder of the business family, rather. That the founder of the family business is that archetypal patriarch that the progeny or the children, the generations of the past identify with who that person was and what that person was about and why they started the company and what the company resents and what values the company represents and how people that work for that company identify with that company and why they want to work with that company. And it's now more than just a job. It's a career. It's a and this component of authenticity comes into play because authenticity is the opposite of unreliable, inaccurate. I'm making an argument that the brand needs authenticity because if not, it won't stick. People will figure it out. It'll lose value. Warren Buffett said it takes a lifetime to build a reputation and a moment to tear it away, one decision to tear it down. That's how a brand works. Like the culture makes the brand real. Culture is what actually happens, the identity of the organization, the character of the organization, like the identity, like its personality, which has to do with how the people like relate to the customers, to one another, the management, and which of course has to do with the shareholders. And if it's a private business and a family business, then the shareholders are the family and how they relate to one another, which is why, when you hear somebody like Bernard Arnault say what he said about heritage, which I'll read again. Um, Where's the quote? I just lost it. Here it is. In the luxury business, you have to build on heritage. All right. What is heritage? Heritage is inheritance, birthright, patrimony, legacy, bequest. There's implicitly like a generational conversation. It's example. Let's say that I go to a college that I have a great experience with that I hold myself I'm proud of and I'm held in high esteem. It has a certain name that's reputable and I'm recognized by other people. I might want my child to go there. There's an emotional attachment. There's a memory. There's an emotion. And if there's a strong parental and child relationship, now that history of the first generation with that school and the life they built through it and their attachment to it and their memories with their children going to it and going through it, that next generation can have an even greater identification with that school. You find people, multi-generational veterans, that each generation has served in the military and they're proud of it. There's this generational, there's this time, um, this temporality to brand where is if the product is sustainable and valid and authentic and quality over time, the brand becomes more powerful, more and more. Because brand is like congealed group think around reputation of an individual has a reputation. Hey, I'm going to give a referral. I get a referral as a consequence of quality customer service and customer satisfaction. It's the service and the quality of the product or the outcome as it related to that customer. Remember, brand is belief consumers have an X to solve for Y. X is the brand and Y is the problem. And there's an objectivity and subjectivity to the problem and an interrelationship between the subject, the problem, and their object, or that would be the company, the product, the establishment. There's an interaction happening, and so how to build a brand, a business brand that people will never forget. Never forget it, that's like another level of intensity. But let's just say authentic, right? Reputation over time from customers equals brand. Brand to be continually renewed takes culture and cultural reintegration and cultural alignment, which takes hero, conflict, narrative, over triumph. So that's one component. Authenticity, quality, time, reintegration. Which so there's a leadership management component. And even there's going to be a shareholder component, especially you see like a family business, or there's think of like Berkshire Hathaway, the holding company, although it's not necessarily a family business. Like Howard Buffett won't be running it next, but he'll be a check about the son of the founder Warren Buffett on the board, making sure that the that Warren's values are aligned or instantiated in what the business becomes. There's non-family members running it in the next generation, but how it was built through the shareholders participating in its growth through the annual meetings and the writing and the letters and the philosophy that the founder and his partner Charlie Munger prescribed and continue to reintegrate and integrate every year with all the books around it. Like the shareholders are going to keep the spirit alive based on their identities and their cultures and their brands being built on top of this school of thought. And so, there's symbolism is important. What does it mean? What does this brand mean? How does it represent it in symbol? Institution is important. Like um, a place like in symbolism is a place of worship or a place of meeting, a place of gathering. A place of gathering leads to the ritual of gathering, which was a form of worship of an idea. And so the symbol is not just like I'm wearing a cross, but it's I'm going to a church and I'm going to pray. And that's a part of me identifying as an individual in of that culture with that brand, that belief in X, Christianity to solve for Y, my sin and my sinfulness. So what's the story? What is the struggle? What hero can I identify with? Or heroes, can I identify with? What 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 does this object or this service, what does this product do for me that impacts and influences my identity and how I project myself into the world? That's like the secret code, if you can crack the code on that. And I think Bernard Arnault is saying like heritage, it takes time of quality over and over as it builds and builds and builds and instantiates itself in culture, like general culture. The brand gets more and more and more momentum, and then as Munger would say, it's a Lollapalooza effect. And of course, the marketing channels are important. Where is the attention? Where are the eyeballs of the consumer? What is the current groupthink? Who are the influencers? How can that a product or service be put in front of them? What and this is where authenticity comes in. How that deal is struck, how they market these product or service, and its authenticity will have an impact on the brand. If it's genuine, if it's real, if people are really behind it, if there's something there that speaks to people, it will market itself. The true brands have are they're reflections of truth. They're reflections of value. They're macro representations of the microeconomics, the relationship between customer and product, customer and service, customer and company, customer and satisfaction, customer and experience. And over time, it develops into brand. But let's face it, the majority of companies aren't in existence long enough for a brand to be built. Or they don't necessarily, they don't have the leadership, the heroes. They don't have enough heroes to build it because the hero's relationship with the journey, with the struggle, with the triumph, with the adversary speeds up or elongates that temporality, meaning more can get done in a shorter period of time with dependent upon the heroes, dependent upon the leadership, dependent upon the management, and of course, dependent upon the product and the quality and like all that mixing together is the secret formula that is not going to be broken down and complete in this quick topic on how to build a business brand that people will never forget. But hopefully, you've taken away some lessons that time is important, as Tolstoy said. The two most powerful forces are patience and time. Your role as a hero in that story, as the service provider, as the product creator, as the visionary, as the sacrificial, how much are you sacrificing? What are you putting into it? How are you willing to put it all on the line? And how is it being represented through language and story and spirit and narrative and symbol? What are your rituals? Who are your heroes? What's the story? Why does it matter? Who that already has influence and trust can represent it? And how authentic is that representation? And at the end of the day, is the product valuable? Does it create more value than it costs to participate in its engagement by customers? Share this with a friend interested in brand. Leave us a review, and we'll see you next time on the Culture Matters podcast.